Greetings, friends and fellow freelancers. Welcome back to another episode of Tabletop Mercenary. This week, I wanted to touch on a piece of advice that was given to all of us many years ago by one of fiction's most dangerous clowns. And it is a thing that seems very simple on the surface, but there's a lot of pushback against it, and I wanted to talk about that as well as the realities that a lot of us are facing, whether you're writing TTRPGs, whether you're writing novels, whether you're making videos, whatever it is you're doing, there's always going to be people who don't like it when you take this to heart. And if you find that's the case you're running into, you should probably reevaluate your relationship with those people and their respect for you as a professional or even a hopeful professional. That advice, of course, is if you're good at something, never do it for free. And that sounds very simple. It sounds very straightforward of if you have a skill and someone else wants access to that skill, they need to compensate you for whatever it is you're doing for them. However, there are a couple of layers to this, and it is important to keep some of these in mind, particularly if you're just starting out in the field or if you're not entirely sure, well, what your skills are worth on the market. So, to begin with, don't do something for free does not necessarily mean cash on the barrelhead. Sure, that's nice when that happens, but it's important to remember that exchanges come in many different forms, and that just because you don't get handed a bunch of cash, that doesn't mean you aren't being compensated for what you're doing. As an example, let's say you out there, you're thinking about being a professional game master. You've seen that the industry is not going away, there is a demand for it, and you've been running games for many years. You think this is something you could do, but you're not entirely sure that you're ready to find clients, run a business, that sort of thing yet. But you still want to see what it's like to, run for strangers who are, there to be at your table, and you're being paid by someone to run for them. So, quote unquote, being paid in this case, a great way to do this is to volunteer for a gaming convention, or at least a convention that has a gaming room. Because when you do this, you are usually being compensated in that you'll often get your badge comp, so you get to go to the con for free. Sometimes there'll be additional perks depending on what con you do this for. Anyone who's ever attempted to run games at Gen Con, there's usually something a little extra kicked in for whatever company you're running the games for. It's very complicated. I can do that for a whole different video, but that is an example of what I'm talking about. Just because someone didn't cut you a check doesn't mean you didn't get something. And that's important to keep in mind because sometimes people focus too much on strict monetary arrangements when you can do something a little in between. You can do exchange of services. You could do exchange of goods. If it's someone who wants you to write something for them, they'll do some art for you. If you want someone to help you out with your podcast, or they want your expertise on editing a video, what can they do that you would consider an equal exchange for what you're giving them? Secondly, though, and this is something a lot of folks, I don't know why there's so much pushback. I have theories, but we'll get to those in a bit. And it's the idea that just because you're being told don't do things for free, that's in a professional capacity. Do not show up as a professional, putting in professional work and professional skill for free. That doesn't mean you're not allowed to do things for fun, or you can never do things free of charge for people you like. As an example, this is one that comes up time and time again. And for anyone who's heard the anti-sex worker rhetoric, it's very similar. If you have someone who's a paid game master, one of the first reactions you'll get from people is, I would never charge my friends for a game. Of course you wouldn't, because you like those people and you enjoy running with them, and that's an experience that you want to have with your friend group. That's not what paid game masters are doing. They're running for strangers, and they're running a game that those strangers want, and they're catering it to them. They are providing a service for those people. The money is what they're being given to do that. Even if you are a paid game master, that doesn't mean you can't get your friends together on a Saturday night for Pathfinder or World of Darkness, whatever it is you enjoy playing, and do that for fun in your off time. It just means that just because you enjoy running a game for your friends, that doesn't mean you should then be expected to run a game for other people who are not your friends, and to do that just for the love of the game. If somebody wants those skills and you are not inclined to give those skills to them free of charge, that's up to them to pay for what they want. That is what this means. And this is very important to remember because a lot of us devalue ourselves, or we say, well, we have to pay our dues. We have to put in a certain amount of effort. We have to build a certain amount of reputation. No, you don't. Or more importantly, the reputation you're building needs to be not that person that you can just ask to do stuff for free and then they'll do it for free, and the person that you gave your work to will then turn around and make a profit off of it. I do not remember the name of the individual, but there's a story that floats around the internet every now and again of a fairly famous writer who has had many novels, has won many awards, and there was an awards show going on, and they happened to know the person who was running it, and this person came to them and said, hey, like, I'm having a bit of a struggle. I was hoping I could get you to, write a short speech for me, something I can just open the ceremony with. And he said, all right, what's your word count? And he gave him just a regular word count, and he quoted him a price. And as it was, you're going to charge me for this? Yes. Because you came to me knowing that I am a professional, that I am an award-winning professional, and you were hoping to get free word count out of me. That's not acceptable. And again, this is entirely up to you as a professional. Read the room, figure out what you're comfortable with. But if someone comes to you and they want you to perform work on their behalf, they want you to help with a project, they want you to write some character descriptions, they want you to put together a list, put together some sort of thing for a game they're running, they want you to edit their book, whatever it is they want you to do. Ask yourself, am I helping out a friend? Or is someone trying to take advantage of me because they know I can do this? And there's going to be a lot of dynamics here. It's going to be like, how well do you know this person? Do they come through for you when you need them to do something? Is this something that has the potential to make a lot of profit, and you're just going to be left out in the cold if it does well? All of these are things that you need to know and that you should consider. But most importantly, don't do something for free means that you need to put yourself as a professional into consideration. You need to ask, what am I worth? What is this thing I'm contributing worth? And something that I have found is when you talk to people about this, especially if those people came to you and you ask, okay, what is my compensation going to be? If they're willing to negotiate, there's usually some good faith there. If it's, the conversation is, we don't have much of a budget, but we could swing this. Or if it's, none of us are getting paid up front, but we are selling this, so we could cut you in for a percentage of any sales we make. This is looking more like a good faith argument. These are people who understand that they're asking you to contribute to something in a professional capacity, and they want to give you something to sweeten the pot. They want you to be invested. They want you to be involved. But if they start making excuses, if they start haranguing you about, like, well, none of us are getting paid, why should you get paid? Or if it's, well, clearly, like, yeah, you're not the friend I thought you were. Or why do you expect to be paid for every little thing? Turn it back around on them. Ask them, why are you coming to me to do this thing for you that apparently you cannot do, but you're not willing to compensate me for my time? You're expecting me to just give you a whole bunch of free labor, a whole bunch of free work. Because it is a thing that I have found, regardless of what level you're at, regardless of what type of art you practice, there are always people trying to get something for nothing. And there are always people out there who will be upset when you inform them, I know I'm worth something. I have a skill you need, I create stuff that you want, or I make things that you need access to. You don't get that access for free if I don't choose to give you that access for free. And people who don't respect you on this, who don't treat you well, that's on them. They are telling you who they are. Believe them. Because otherwise, they're just going to try and take advantage of you. They are going to try to get your skill and your work for free. And that might be because, like, well, they think they're entitled to it, or their vision requires, like, your work to be added to it to make it the best it can possibly be. And we've all been there. We've all gotten caught up in our own projects. We've all had our ideas that we sometimes forget exactly what we owe to other people. But at the same time, if you need collaboration, if you need somebody else to help you make this project a reality, it's on you to get them involved, to get them dedicated to what you're doing. In a lot of ways, it's like being a game master. You need to get people invested in the story you're telling and the game you're trying to make to get them to show up at that table and give you 100%. And if you can't do that, well, maybe this isn't a project that should exist. So keep that in mind, especially because there are so many people out there who, as artists, as creators, are desperate for that approval. We want someone to consider our work good enough to put into whatever product they're doing. We love the idea that there's people out there who want to help us do what we do. And that can often blind us to when we're being taken advantage of. So while you don't have to walk around with a giant board with all your prices on it whenever somebody approaches you, like you're some sort of very strange NPC, though you might be able to do that at a convention. I'm going to have to try that at some point and see if that gets me more work. But keep in mind that when people are asking you for stuff, ask what you're worth. Ask how much you're willing to contribute to this situation. Because if it's just something you feel you could just toss off, you'd have some fun with, or you would actually enjoy doing this, that's your decision. You can choose to do that. Yeah, at much the same point, if you were a professional mechanic and a friend of yours is restoring a car, you don't have to charge him for all the hours you spend hanging out in his garage working on that hunk of junk trying to restore it. If that's the thing you like doing with your friend, you can absolutely do that. But if some random guy wandered over to your house and said, "Hey, I want you to help me fix my car," you don't owe him anything, as you could very well quote him a price and say, "Hey, this is what it'll cost for me to do this." And if he pitches a fit that you're demanding, something he can't afford, or he really needs your help, okay, that's too bad. If you are not somebody that I'm willing to give that access to, I'm the one who sets the price. And keep that in mind. You are the one who decides what you're worth. Whether or not someone can afford you, that's on them. And if you need compensation for what you're doing and you can't afford to do it for free, make people understand that. Explain to them the amount of time this is going to take, the hours you're going to put in, the resources you have to dedicate to this, and all the other stuff that isn't going to be getting done while you're working on their project. Sometimes when people understand that, it becomes clearer and they're either apologetic or they will offer you some sort of compensation. Other times they will pitch a fit and try to guilt you into doing what they want free of charge. And when that happens, again, believe who they are, because that is not an attitude of someone who respects you. That is not an attitude of somebody that you want to work for or with. So keep that in mind, especially going into this new year, because there's so many of us who are either trying to get into the field or who are already here and are scratching and scrounging for work. Just because, someone offers you a little bit of praise or says that your work would be great for something, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have your best interests at heart. They might just be trying to flatter you into doing what they want so that they can get something cheap or they can get something for free. Put yourself first and make sure that you are being treated well in whatever projects you choose to be part of. And there's a follow-up to this where we will look at the other side of the coin, but I will get to that in the next episode. So between now and then, if anyone has any stories of terrible clients or people who've tried to be clients that have attempted to hire them for something, any warning signs, any red flags that you really look for when someone comes to you with a potential job, what do you look for? What is something that tips you off that this is not going to be worth your time, energy, and frustration? Because I've got a couple of my own. I'll share them down in the comments as well. But between now and then, as always, like, share, subscribe, hit that bell for notification, because we have fewer and fewer people who seem to remember that we're putting out new episodes. And till next time, Tabletop Mercenary, signing off. First and foremost, thank you for staying to the end of this episode of Tabletop Mercenary. If there's a question you have about being an RPG creator, please don't hesitate to put it in the comments below so I can address it in a future episode. If you want to help me keep the lights on and keep this show going, then please consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and giving it a share on your own social media pages to help boost the signal. Lastly, if you really enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a tip by buying me a Ko-fi or becoming a Patreon patron at the links in the video description below. You'll find me on both sites under the name The Literary Mercenary.